Imagine a world that is far too gritty to take the 4% of the population of people with powers and put them on that pedestal and make them superheroes. Instead, they're all used or persecuted. That is the world of Code 8. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk theological review for Code 8, starring Robbie Amell and Stephen Amell. The majority of this, I'm going to stay spoiler-free, but I'm definitely going to dive into spoilers and spoil the end of this movie towards the end of this review, and I will let you know when we hit that. Is Code 8 a good movie, and is it worth your time during this shelter-at-home time to check out on Netflix? I'd say, yeah, it's definitely worth your time to check out. I'm not in love with this movie. I thought it was good. I was entertained from the beginning to the end. I felt like it had a good pace where it kind of kept the action flowing and kept me engaged with things happening, and it had an interesting story with a little bit of an interesting theme thrown in there. So I think overall I'm going to give this movie a solid B. I am not in a hurry to go back and rewatch this movie anytime too soon, but I was entertained while I was watching it, and during this time of shelter at home, you might watch it and find it an entertaining movie, especially if you're like me and you love the superhero genre, you love superpowers, you love sci-fi. This is a very good movie. Now, when you look at it like this, though, it is a good movie, but it's not like the most original look at superheroes, because there's a lot of it that just reminded me of other things. The way this movie opens, it kind of gives you this montage, like during the opening credits, just to set up the world.
Certainly, power-enabled people were invited to Lincoln City to help with manufacturing and construction.
And I suppose, yes, this was a time when the usefulness of those skills outweighed the potential danger.
To set up what history was like in this kind of alternate universe with powered people, and kind of let you know where things progressed, where things went off the rails.
Look, economically speaking, over time, those with power were no longer in demand. Machines could do what they could do.
Hundreds are out of work, and more layoffs are expected.
And now how powered people are kind of persecuted, they're looked down upon, and the 4% of the population that is superpowered people, like a good chunk of them really live under the poverty line, really just scrounging for work wherever they can find work. They must register their powers and all of that. And so it's a very interesting, gritty look where even at the best of times, people with powers were not glorified as superheroes, but they were used in the workforce. And now here at the worst of times, they're living below the poverty line. What it reminds me most of is X-Men. Because you have the world that fears the X-Men, they fear mutants, they persecute the mutants, and in X-Men you even kind of have the Sentinels going out there helping to police those with powers and police the mutants, and you really have that exact setup in this. You have the world that kind of fears those that have powers, and they persecute those with powers, and they have a police force of robots called Guardians that are kind of dropped from these giant drones that help stop those with powers. I felt like I was watching X-Men in a universe where Charles Xavier did not exist, where his school wasn't there, and so the positive side of X-Men didn't exist, and all it was the negative side of that world. So really, that's kind of how I relate it to the most. What attracted me to watch this movie and made me think, yeah, I want to check this out for sure, was Robbie Amell and Stephen Amell. Robbie Amell was great in season 1 of The Tomorrow People, and I like Robbie Amell and a lot of the other things that he's done. I think it's criminal that the Tomorrow People didn't get more seasons. I thought the middle part of the first season of Tomorrow People was boring, but the beginning and the end of that season were really good, and I would like to have seen more of that. And of course, you have Stephen Amell, who just finished 7.5 years as the Green Arrow on Arrow. So I was very much looking forward to seeing these two cousins team up in this movie about people with powers. Robbie Amell, he played a good character named Connor, who was just in a very desperate situation, wanting to help his mom who was sick. And the desperateness of this situation is pushing him to more and more extremes, maybe things that he wouldn't have considered before, but it's just the desperateness of this situation and his desperateness to do good and provide for his mom. It's kind of pushing him, as well as the fact that living as a powered person, trying to hide the fact that he has powers, but seeing this persecution against those with powers just all over the world, you just really feel like life keeps on hitting him, and you feel it when he wants to punch life back. Like, you understand it. So they did a good job connecting you to Connor, and Robbie Amell did a good job with his performance where, like, I felt connected to that. And I could understand why he was making the choices that he made, even though I didn't think all those choices were always good. And I think that's the thing. Like, you as the viewer go, dude, that's not a good choice. But can almost see how you have no other way to go. So I get it. So I think it did a good job with that you really sympathize with Connor. And you do like Stephen Amell, who plays this character, Garrett, and he does a good job kind of like recognizing the potential in Connor and doing what he can to train Connor to tap into the fullness of his powers. You know, like they do a job together and he starts to recognize the potential and he goes to train him in that potential. The one thing is I wish we spent more time on this training process. I felt like we kind of montaged our way through it pretty quickly and kind of just moved forward a little quickly. And I feel like it could have added to the story to have spent just a little bit more time on the montage of the training and spend more time in that training area, because it was actually really cool to watch Stephen Amell training Robbie Amell and his powers. Part of me was thinking about those times when, you know, the Green Arrow put together Team Arrow and he would train them, even though I never really liked Team Arrow. But still, I'm thinking of him training, and here I am watching him train another dude in superpowers. And so that was kind of cool. It was interesting to see the darker side of Stephen Amell, to not see him playing the Green Arrow, who starts dark and gets brighter as the show goes on. But even in his darkest and grittiest, he's still, you know, fighting to be a hero. And we don't see that at all in this. He starts dark and gritty in this. He ends dark and gritty in this. And so it's kind of interesting, but he's also kind of that gray area character, because he's definitely not a good guy. But in terms of villains, it's like, he's not the worst of the villains either. So it does a good job connecting you to him, and you're seeing kind of that darker, grittier side of Stephen Amell. And so that was really fun to see that, and to see him play something different than the Green Arrow, yet still kind of in the same superhero genre. So I did enjoy that aspect of it. I thought overall, like, the action was really good. The effects were pretty cool. And when you think about the fact that this was a crowd-funded film, and so you think about where they spent their money and how they saved up to use their money on like these super-powered scenes, like, I think they did a good job. Like, visually, like, you have the drug lord who's like the main villain of this, and the way he would look into somebody else's mind, there's this cool effect over his eyes. It happened on the other person's eyes when he was really looking into their head. So it shows you, like, it's not like he's just reading every thought off people's minds. He's got to take a moment and use his power to see what's on their mind. And so, like, I thought that was kind of a cool thing to do.
How do you want to live in this life? Do what they want us to do, live by their rules, hide our powers. Be who you are. And if you see something that you want, take it.
Now, this is where I'm jumping into spoiler territory. Now, you have Stephen Amell there, and he's teaching Robbie Amell's character about how to take, giving him that philosophy of life is cruel, so be cruel back. Take. You want it, you take it. And Robbie Amell has had his back up against the wall. Life has really been beating him down. His mom is sick with a tumor in the brain. It's making her powers go haywire. He's trying to hide his powers because his mom has powers, because he has powers. Like, they're mistreated. He has no money. They're about to be evicted. I mean, life has him down. And so you understand at this point, like, why he's doing what he's doing. I mean, you gotta understand, like, the anger probably feels good. It feels good to give in to the cruelty and just be cruel back to this system that is being so unbelievably cruel to him. But now we get into the nitty-gritty where we see how this cruelty continues to hurt. And all it does is make more and more pain. Because you have Naya, who's this interesting character who has this ability to heal. So when Connor meets Naya, I mean, he likes her for her. But he gets this cut on his arm in a fight. Naya heals the cut, and he realizes she's a healer. She could heal my mom. And of course, I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, oh, that's how this is going to end. Somehow they're going to fall in love, all's going to be all right, and she is going to heal his mom, and they're going to live happily ever after. I mean, I didn't really think it was going to be happily ever after, but I did think he and Naya were going to fall in love, and I did think Naya was just going to heal his mom. But it actually became this interesting plot device that made Connor come face to face with actually questioning this philosophy that, you know, Stephen Amell's character is teaching him. I mean, do we pay back cruelty for more cruelty? There's this verse in Romans 12 that says, do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. And I actually feel like the second part of this movie, like when you get into the third act, I think it's really good because through the character of Naya, we have to confront this. Do we cave into evil and let it overcome us, or do we seek to overcome evil with good? So in this final showdown in the end, you have Robbie Amell, and they take out that drug lord after they complete this deal. And Robbie Amell says, let me complete this deal for you, and you give me Naya, like she's a piece of property. Which hurts Naya, because Naya is tired of the fact that people like her for her until they see she's a healer, and now all they want is to use her for her ability. And so Robbie Amell says, let me do this for you. When I get you the drugs, then what you're going to do is give her to me. And so when they go to put this whole plan into motion, Naya is hurt that yet somebody else that she had hoped would be different is seeing her as property, is seeing her as something to be traded. And he's trying to be nice about it. Well, once you heal my mom, you're free to go. But the problem is, the twist is, when she heals somebody, she takes on their sickness. She shows the cut on her arm from when she healed Robbie Amell. Now she carries that cut. If she goes to heal Robbie Amell's mother, she's going to take on that brain tumor and die. So yeah, the mother will live, but she will die. And Robbie Amell, in his desperateness, takes her. He takes her to his mother, and she goes to heal his mother. But when it comes to it, she just decides she's going to sacrifice herself. And she goes to lay her hands on Robbie Amell's mother, and then you see Robbie Amell kind of have these flashbacks of how good his mom is. Of course he wants his mom back. That's like the only good person, the only good thing in his life, that where real love has come from, so he doesn't want to lose her. What makes this scene so powerful is that this is now the moment of truth. Will he be overcome with evil and let Naya die to take his mother's life back?
Take what you came here for.
Or will he overcome evil with good? And his mother being the only good force that he's had in his life, the only true love that he's had in his life, he realizes in this moment she would live crushed knowing how she was healed. She would live crushed knowing what her son did to save her. The way to honor his mother was not to give his soul to evil. The way to honor his mother was to live up to what she taught him and be good and let good overcome evil. So he chose to live up to the goodness his mother believed he could be, and his sacrifice saved Naya's life. The world can be a cruel and difficult place, and it can be an easy thing to want to overcome that cruelty with more cruelty. But all that does is it creates a cycle of cruelty and adds to the problem. This is why the Bible says, don't be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. God is the ultimate good. And when we let him in our heart, he gives us that ability. Supernaturally, he gives us that ability to overcome evil with good. And he takes care of our needs, no matter where we are.
It's gonna be okay. I know it doesn't seem like that right now, but it's all gonna work out.
What did you think of Code 8? Would you go higher or would you go lower with your grade? Let's talk about that in the comments. While you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified the next time I do a movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.